That does not mean I'll always agree with them or say what they want to hear. It does not mean I'll always give them exactly what they want or like cater to them. This can also be a thing in the pro GM space. Some GMs feel like they have to cater to paying players. I don't believe in this at all. I think we are supposed to manage our table with integrity and values. But it does mean that I will treat the conversation as meaningful because it is meaningful to them, and thus it should be meaningful to me if I want to keep the game running and keep the players invested and nurture the space and community. Hello friends, welcome back to GM Philosophy in the Morning. I'm the GM Philosopher. This is the channel where we empower game masters to run better games. Today I want to talk about a part of game mastering that I do not think gets discussed enough. Because when most people think about the work of being a GM, they think about preparing encounters, building worlds, making maps, balancing monsters, writing NPCs, and running the actual sessions at the table. But if you want to run campaigns that last, if you want players who stay invested, and if you want your table to remain a healthy place that people actually want to come back to week after week, there is another kind of work that you have to be willing to do. And I call this emotional work. And I do not mean that in some vague, sentimental way. I mean literally something very practical. Just a little bit about me. I am a pro game master and a full-time TTRPG content creator. I'm in the business full-time of empowering game masters to run better games. If you want to join my free Discord, links in the description. We are over 600 game masters strong. You can hang out and continue the conversation with us there. Also like and comment. Let me know what you think about this issue as I describe the video. Let me know your experience with it and what you have learned to make it better. Okay. Now, between sessions, your players are going to message you about the rules. Okay. They're going to ask questions about feats, magic items, level up choices, and what their character might be able to do next. Stuff like this, right? This is obvious stuff. But if you run enough games, and especially if your campaigns matter deeply to your players, you're also going to get to a second type of message. You're going to get messages like, hey, what did you think about what my character said last session? Hey, what did you think about what that player said? Did you think it was rude? Was he out of line? You have things like this. You might get questions like, I'm worried the rest of the table doesn't like my character. You might get questions like, do you actually like what I'm doing with this character in the story? Does it actually mesh well, right? Players may say things like, I felt kind of weird about this one scene. What do you think? Did I do it bad? You know, I'm having a hard time with another player. Can we talk about it? Could we think through what might happen next session? I'm worried about how this could go, you know, things like this. These are not necessarily rules questions, okay? These are not even story questions exactly. These are emotional questions, okay? And they are part of the job of being a game master, especially a pro game master. Now, some players will almost never send messages like this, okay? Some players will play every week, have a great time, and then go back to their lives until the next session. Other players will be much more communicative, however, right? They'll want to process the story, talk about character relationships, talk through table tension with you as the GM, ask whether they're doing a good job, or seek reassurance when something at the table unsettles them. Okay, now neither kind of player is wrong, 100%. But as the GM, it's important for you to understand that both kinds of players do exist. And that if you are running a real long-term campaign, especially if you're running multiple campaigns, this emotional communication will become part of what you are managing. And handling it well is going to be a strong indicator of how well your games are going to go and whether or not you're actually going to succeed at the process. It's important to understand that the game master is not just running a game. The game master is actually stewarding a community. This is a better way to think about it. Okay, this is the part I think a lot of game masters miss, actually. A campaign is not just a piece of entertainment that happens for 4 hours every Thursday night. It is a small social ecosystem, right? It is a legitimate community. Even if you are running games for your friends and family, you are still holding together a group of people who are sharing an ongoing creative experience. If you're a professional GM, that becomes even more obvious because what your players are really paying for is not just 4 hours of dice rolling and improv. They are paying for access to a table. They are paying for literally a community, right? It's sort of like paying for access to a country club or a premium pickleball court. They're paying to be part of a creative space that they believe is worth entering. And here's the thing about communities. They require tending. They require communication. They require trust. They require someone to notice when small cracks are starting to form before the whole structure begins to split apart. That does not mean you need to become your player's therapist. Like, that's not what I'm advocating at all. And it does not mean every feeling at the table is automatically your responsibility. It does not mean that you have to fix every interpersonal problem for every grown adult who plays with you. This is not what I'm saying. But it does mean that when a player comes to you with a real concern, that you should take that concern seriously. And if you want your games to succeed, it's in your best interest to do this. Because one of the fastest ways campaigns can die is not through bad combat balance or even weak world building. It is through unresolved human friction. Okay, players may start to feel unheard. Someone may feel quietly alienated and you don't address it. Two people may irritate each other for 6 sessions in a row and then it never gets dealt with. A player starts wondering whether the GM even likes their character. Maybe nobody says anything clearly, and then one day somebody just leaves. From the outside, this can look very sudden, but it was not sudden in truth. In truth, what happened is that it had been fermenting in the walls for months. It just never talked about, and maybe the player even tried to talk about it, but the GM didn't realize what was happening, and that's what I'm trying to raise awareness for in this video. Okay, and this brings me to my next point. Do not treat player concerns like annoying administrative debris. Okay. I think one of the mistakes GMs, especially pro GMs, can make is to treat these messages as interruptions from the real work of running the game. And pro GMs can take this even a level deeper, thinking, well, I'm not getting paid for this, so I shouldn't have to deal with it, right? They might think, I already prepped the session. Like, I already ran the game. My job is done. Why am I now spending extra time talking through all this stuff? These are grown-ups. They should be able to handle their own business, right? I do understand where you're coming from if this is kind of your response to it, okay? Especially if you run multiple games. These conversations can add up. I have weeks where I spend hours responding to player messages, and that is separate from prep. That's separate from running the sessions. That's separate from all the other work that goes into the campaign. But I think it is a mistake to view those conversations as wasted time. Those conversations are part of what keeps the campaign alive. When a player reaches out to you with a concern, I think the best procedure is not, how quickly can I get this off my plate? It should be more like, come in, sit down, tell me what's on your mind, right? That's the image I like to hold in my head. Like, not that I'm some kind of HR department, not that I'm some kind of customer service desk. It's more like I have a built-in little refuge around the game, right? Which is space where I'm in. And one of the people in that refuge might be troubled, right? I'm willing to invite them in, make a cup of tea, metaphorically speaking, and listen carefully, right? Like kind of like a guru who cares about them. That does not mean I'll always agree with them or say what they want to hear. It does not mean I'll always give them exactly what they want or like cater to them. This can also be a thing in the pro GM space. Some GMs feel like they have to cater to paying players. I don't believe in this at all. I think we are supposed to manage our table with integrity and values. But it does mean that I will treat the conversation as meaningful because it is meaningful to them, and thus it should be meaningful to me if I want to keep the game running and keep the players invested and nurture the space and community. And here's the truth. If it mattered enough for them to bring it up, that means it deserves at least enough care for me to hear it honestly, okay? And this leads me to my next point. Sometimes the GM needs to fix the problem, but sometimes the GM also needs to tell the truth, okay? Now, I'm going to talk about this in just a minute, but before I do, I just want to let you know, I have written a couple of really important books on pro GMing and building emotional resonance in campaigns. You can grab my paid GM guidebook right now. It is a brand new book. I wrote this documenting how I went from running 0 paid games to making a really, really excellent side hustle income running them. My full-time job right now is literally running pro games and doing TTRPG YouTube. So the pro games part, I run games on Start Playing and I describe how I made it work using this ebook, 142 pages. Grab that if you want to be a pro GM and actually turn it into a viable side hustle of full-time income. And if you want to build games that have real emotional buy-in, that'll keep players wanting to come back week after week, grab my 50-page ebook, The Advanced Art of TTRPG Game Mastery. This ebook was written basically over the 24 years I've spent running games, learning how to get players emotionally invested into my campaigns where they want to keep coming back again and again. I tell all my secrets, tactics, and insights in this book, so make sure you grab that. Links in the description. You can grab both of those together for about the price of 2 or 3 cups of coffee, friends. So do not miss out on that. That's one of my biggest add-ins, value products I can offer to empower Game Masters to run better games. But now let's talk about this next point, okay? Doing emotional work does not mean taking every player complaint and turning it into a commandment from the heavens, okay? Sometimes a player brings you a legitimate issue Another player may be dominating scenes and is bothering them. Maybe someone's being disrespectful to them, like below the curtain, right? Maybe a player is repeatedly making the table less safe, less fun, or less welcoming. These are issues. In these cases, you as the GM may have a responsibility to step in, truly. But sometimes a player comes to you because another player simply annoys them. And that is a much harder situation because there may be no actual wrongdoing. There may be no rules being broken. There may be no villain in this particular story. Sometimes it's just one person saying, I don't enjoy this other person's style, while you as the GM do not actually see the other players doing anything wrong. In that case, I think part of the GM's emotional work is having enough courage to say something like, I hear you, friend. This is very frustrating for you, and I can tell, but I'm going to be honest. I do not think this player is behaving badly. I think this may be a personality conflict between the two of you. And I do not think it would be right for me to correct them when they haven't really done anything wrong, right? Now, that is still emotional work. That is not just soothing people. Sometimes that is clarifying reality, and it means being a good community leader. Now, some people may disagree with me. Drop a comment, let me know. Sometimes if 4 players are constantly struggling with the 5th, then you may have to have a different kind of conversation, or it may be a different kind of problem, right? So these can be different types of problems. Maybe that 5th player is doing something harmful that you have missed, or maybe they're not doing anything morally wrong, but they're simply not a good fit for that particular group. Or maybe you have 4 bullies who are trying to bully out this good 5th person. It's really important to unravel these things accurately, but this all starts when you sit down to have honest conversations with your players and really listening, hence the emotional work part of it. And if you don't stay aware of these things, they can sneak up on you and they can make you look bad, because it can make you look like someone who doesn't even know what's going on at their own table, right? This is one of the hardest realities of running communities. Not every person belongs in every group. And if one person is consistently damaging the chemistry of the table, even without malicious intent, you may eventually have to make a hard decision to protect the health of the whole campaign. Sometimes you may have to actually remove bullies. Sometimes you may have to make decisions that are going to cause an exodus of bullies from your games. This is called having integrity and running your table with values. And then if you're a pro GM, you may be afraid of missing out on the money, but don't. Worrying about the money is the wrong decision. You must worry about the value and the integrity of your table. These situations are not easy, and they don't always feel good, but sometimes this is part of being a good leader, okay? And this brings me to my next point. Emotional work also means making players feel seen, okay? There's another side to this that I think is easy to overlook. Players do not only come to you when they're upset. Sometimes they're quietly wondering whether they are even doing something that matters. They may wonder whether you even like their character, whether the group enjoys their role play, whether the arc they're building is actually making a difference and feeling legitimate, whether they're contributing something worthwhile to the table. And I think GMs can do a lot of good by giving more intentional, positive feedback in this direction. Tell players when they had a great scene, right? Tell them when a character choice created a powerful moment for you as a game master. Tell them when they set another player up beautifully, and then reward them with a heroic inspiration or something. Tell them when you are excited about what they're building. Message them after the game and tell them. Okay, so I'm going to be honest. This is an area where I can always do better myself. Sometimes I don't do this the best, but I know that when I do it well, I see that it really makes a difference. When you're running a lot of games, it is easy to become efficient in a way that accidentally makes you less emotionally expressive. But I think that the emotional expression matters. When players feel seen, they become more secure, more invested, and are more willing to keep giving creatively to the table. Okay. And this brings me to my next point. You cannot remove all human difficulty from the table. This is really important to know. It's an important caveat. Doing emotional work does not mean you can make everyone happy all the time. It just doesn't. You cannot guarantee that every player will love every other player. You cannot guarantee that nobody will feel insecure. You cannot guarantee that every group will last forever. You cannot single-handedly drag a dysfunctional table into health if the people at the table refuse to participate in good faith. The GM is a player too. You're not merely a service machine designed to absorb every emotional shockwave generated by the group. So there are moments when you may have to say, I do not think I can give you what you're looking for here. I do not think this is the right table for you, my friend. Or maybe something like, I love having you around, but this situation is not working for me. Now, especially for professional game masters, this can be very frightening because there can be a money cost here, and it can feel like you're losing out on valuable resources if you do this. But if you keep the wrong player at the table because you're afraid to lose the income, you can poison the game for everyone, including yourself. And that is scarcity thinking. Focus on building the best table you can. Focus on professionalism, honesty, and health of the game first. If you do that well, the money will follow far more reliably than if you cling desperately to every single player, no matter what damage they may be doing. Right. Next, it's important to understand that the work between sessions is actually a crucial part of the game. And this is, I think, the point I want to leave you with, which is really, really important. Running a great campaign is not just about what happens at the table. It is also about what happens between sessions. It is the messages, the check-ins, the player who tells you they're worried about their character, right? The conflict you gently help untangle before it becomes a campaign-ending problem. The reassurance, the honesty, the listening, the difficult conversations, the encouragement, the quiet maintenance of trust. That is emotional work. And if you want to run games that last, games where people are deeply invested, games where the table feels like more than just a scheduled activity, then you cannot ignore that part of the craft. You need to make time for it. You need to take it seriously, and you need to get better at it over time. Because the truth is, the campaign usually does not die from a lack of lore or balanced combat or good NPCs, blah, blah, blah. Campaigns die from a lack of care and organization. They die because there are issues that are hurting the crucial mandate, which is to empower players to enjoy telling the story of their character. So a lack of care about the emotional work side of it can definitely lead to the ruination of what you're trying to achieve, and it can ruin your games. So there you go. Boom. There's my take on it, guys. Empowering game masters to run better games is the goal here. Drop me a comment. Let me know what you think about this. Roll some D100s for me at your next game, friends, and I will see you awesome people on the next one.